All right, I'm the flat rate master, and let's talk about how you did last year. So I'm referring to how much you built last year for the shop. And when I say build, I mean everything. I know there's a lot of hourly techs, a lot of flat rate techs, a lot of hybrid techs. But let's get into your numbers and what they really mean. Now, a shop owner is rarely going to share his real numbers. By that, I mean net profit. I mean, I don't blame them, it's their business. Hopefully, though, they will share gross profit. And by that, I mean what you actually build over the course of the year. Now, here for us, I literally can walk over to my computer terminal right there and pull up everybody's hours, what everybody billed as far as parts. I can see how much I made the shop in gross profit, we're going to talk about in a second, and I can see how many hours I billed. And I can see how many hours everybody billed. And that's a global tool that everybody in both shops can see. It's not hidden behind a password protection. Anybody can look it up. It's public information for this shop. Now, I'm not going to share my numbers or anybody else's because it's, the shop's numbers, not, mine. But let's talk about the important difference between gross profit and net profit. Now, when you look up gross profit in a computer software for a shop, it may have an accurate number for what they pay you. It may not. It may have a loaded number based on averages of every technician. It depends on how the shop owner set up the software. If you look at gross profit, which gross is gross because it doesn't include all the numbers. So let's break down some of those numbers. The hourly, let's say, profit they made off of you is going to vary based on the numbers that the shop owner put into the software. Now, most shop owners do not rely on their management software to accurately determine those numbers. They use something like QuickBooks. Now, that number might be higher than you get paid because there's other expenses in hiring an employee. I've talked about this before. Unemployment insurance and, costs of doing payroll, other related payroll costs, insurance for, health insurance, workman's comp insurance, all that has to be loaded into your payroll as far as the whole real number and what you get paid and that number that's in the system. Neither one of them could be in reality. You have to understand that. That number is literally a placeholder. They don't use their management software to determine the actual profit of the company. I don't know anybody that actually does that. They use software like QuickBooks and other Peachtree and accounting software, which has the real numbers. Important thing. So let's talk about parts profit. Now, a reason I bring up parts profit when it comes to technicians, if you're a flat rate like me, I don't care what the parts profit is. It doesn't matter to me for me. But overall, for your well-being as a technician and, looking for raises and stuff like that, it's important because that's your overall profit of what they've made gross on you. Now, I keep saying gross because that is important. That's not the true number of profit off of you. All those costs I talked about. And you have to remember all the other costs, not just what they pay you. Keep in mind, building, software, insurance, loan payments, all that kind of stuff is added to the gross profit, or I should say deducted from the gross profit to get your net profit. Net profit is what the company actually made after they paid everything. And those numbers will not be reflected in that. I just want to clarify that. But how you can use that information. Shop owner is willing to share it ask him to pull up the years to years of what you've built. The reason I say that is if you're stagnant, you've billed this much money last year, this much money the year before, and this year you build the same, well, you're kind of stagnated in what you're producing for the shop. Think about it. Hard to offer you a raise when nothing's changed. Yeah, expenses have changed, and the boss should be doing something about inflation and doing, raises based on inflation, but that's a different subject that I'm not getting into. But think about it. You're asking for a raise again, and what you build this year is what you built last year. So his costs are going up, or her, are going up because you want a raise, but you're producing the exact same thing. You want to see a slight increase. Maybe you need to look at some of your processes. Maybe the shop needs to look at some of their processes. Think about it. Think about ways you can improve yourself or how the shop operates. Just because you're a tech doesn't mean you don't have good ideas on how to optimize workflow. Or, like I've pointed out many times, if you're an hourly tech and your shop doesn't bill for diagnostic time, bill for it. I don't care if you're hourly. Bill for it. Costing the shop money. I digress. But look at those numbers. Figure out what you can do to improve yourself. I talked about it in last week's video. We should always be looking to improve ourselves. What can we do to be better? And again, if your numbers are better year over year, well, good for you. Great. Hit them for that raise because you deserve it. And that's the whole point of this video, is those numbers can help you get a raise. I want everybody in my audience to make as much money as they can. I don't care about the pay system. Said that before. I want you to make the most amount of money you can. Use those numbers against the boss. If you're billing more than you were last year and you're making the same amount, it's time for a raise. Just say it. But I want to reiterate, gross profit and net profit are very, very, very different things. Very different things. Gross profit is a make-believe number. I can't stress that enough. It is just a made-up number. Yes, it is bearing on how much you've sold. All right, the biggest metric you need to look at, though, is gross sales. This is the big number. This is how much you actually sold in hours and parts. That's a big number for you to really look at. As a technician, you don't have control over parts margins. So profit for you is nothing. Whereas looking at the number of cars you looked at versus how much your average RO was versus how much you sold. That number year over year can really prove your case that you need a raise. If you're billing, $50,000 over last year, keep in mind that's gross sales, so that's everything. That's the engine you sold, the transmission you sold, or the 20-hour reseal job you did. Just saying, that's the big number, not necessarily what the shop made on you. That's just what the shop billed out for your work. But it's a really good metric of how well you're doing your job writing up cars. Because if you think about it, hourly salary, whatever, if your average RO is the cost of an oil change and maybe a filter, you're not doing a whole lot for the shop. If your average RO is $300, $400, $500, doing much better. Now that'll obviously, don't take that number as gospel, because that will considerably vary by shop, by demographic, by lots of factors. If you work on, high-end BMWs all day, your average RO is going to be really high, versus if you work on Kias and Corollas, it's going to be pretty low. Not because they don't break, but because people don't spend money on them. That was the point. But it's a really great metric to look at how well you're doing as far as writing up cars. I know it's not a perfect metric because lost sales, which is another thing to look at. If your system reports it, look at lost sales. That's not your fault. Lost sales is the guys up front. And, our system will break it down based on service writer, and it'll tell you some things too. I know this is high-level shop owner kind of stuff, but it's really good information for a technician as well. Because, if your lost sales are really high and the rest of the techs are lower, it might be showing some difference in how you write up versus how they write up, whether you're going for the big tickets and the service writers don't understand how to sell those big tickets, which happens, whereas the other guys try to sell what they think they can sell, whereas you try to sell everything the car needs. My personal opinion is how you should do it. But anyway, it's another good metric. Look at all those numbers. Look at gross profit. Look at your overall sales for parts and labor. Again, I don't care what you say, you're still judged by hours billed. And lost sales. Now, lost sales is more of a tool for, again, learning stuff about how you approach selling tickets, i.e. how you write up tickets. But it can also show some inadequacies, up there as well. So just a lot of good information for you to have. Compare those numbers year to year and see how you're doing. Hopefully your shop owner will be willing to share that information, because it's incredibly valuable as a technician to learn about that kind of stuff. Look at yourself in a good light. It's kind of part 2 from last week's video, but kind of a standalone. So hope you enjoyed it. As always, thanks for watching. I am the Flat Rate Master. Hopefully your shop owner will share those information. Hopefully your shop owner will be willing to share. Hopefully your shop owner will. Hopefully your shop owner will.